Hey, and just a quick reminder that the audio-only versions of these Vital MX interviews are available on the Vital MX podcast page. Search for it anywhere you get your pods and let your friends know about it. Hey guys, Dark Side again with Vital MX. Today, I've got from WPS Fly Racing, the sales manager and media relations manager, Jason Thomas. What's up, JT?
Not too much. I'm in Florida at the moment, visiting some of our Western Power Sports dealers and going to check out Mini Olympics a little bit and also visit some family. So getting to do quite a few things.
Yeah, it's a good week to maybe be at a race and go do some Thanksgiving.
Yeah. It's I can accomplish a lot of things down here at the moment, and these weeks where I have the ability to do different things are rare. Once we start Supercross again, my time is pretty much over with as far as personal goes.
Right, and that's right around the corner. Well, let's get into this because I don't want to keep you too long so you can get to doing some more enjoyable things. Your professional career was about 16 years, and through that relationship, you built relationships and a work ethic that, in my opinion, it seems like led into the career you have now. Just kind of talk about what tools transferred from your racing career into doing what you do now.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. I think discipline of being on a really regimented schedule where, you have to train, you have to ride, you're flying all the time, and you kind of get into routines, which obviously helps for life, like more of a 9-to-5 type life where you have to be in an office and you have deadlines and you have things that need to be accomplished. So you kind of build that regimen where I think had I just purely gone to college and, I had friends that were in school and they were out till, 2 a.m. every night and then not up till noon. And then they were still trying to race. And I just didn't see a lot of discipline in their life that was going to help them on race day. So I got into this schedule where I got up early and I was on my bicycle at the same minute every day. And then I was at the track the same minute every day. And I feel like that helped me when I stopped racing, like being used to that sort of life. Because like you have to be at the office, like I have to be on time and people are depending on you and there are things you have to get done. And then secondarily to that, and maybe more importantly, I also learned kind of how to be really versatile. With racing, you have to, for me anyway, I was always going out trying to find other races to go to. Where could I travel to? What countries were going to have races going on? What opportunities were out there and what door could I knock on to try to get into the next race and make some money. And I've tried to kind of carry on that same approach in my work life now because there are different things I do. I work with Racer X and I work with Steve at PulpMX, and obviously my main focus is on fly racing, but there are all these other avenues that I've taken on now going into, the television side and all these things. Had I not been willing to pursue other opportunities, I don't know that those would have ever come about. And I think I learned that just willingness and you kind of have to put yourself out there. You have to be willing to take some chances and be uncomfortable at times. But in the end, you can really further yourself by taking some risk.
Absolutely. The Fly brand started in 98. What year did you first start wearing Fly?
Yeah, and it's funny, like it definitely did start in 98, but it was very humble beginnings in those days. I mean, we had, handlebars that were early on. That was like the first product. And then we started morphing into other things. And then they built a helmet and then eventually apparel. But, those early days, I wouldn't say anybody was really doing much with it until 2000, 2001. And then I started wearing it at the end of 2002. So yes, the brand started in 98, but it was more of like conceptually and trying to get products to market in those early days versus like, oh yeah, Fly Racing's a brand in 98. Because it's always funny. Like you hear that term, and I think that's true for every company. When the idea started and almost like you broke ground on the brand, that's when it started, but nobody really knew it at the time.
Okay. So in 2002, when you start wearing it, how did it compare to other gear that was on the market at the time?
It wasn't great, to be honest. It really wasn't. It was heavy. I didn't think that it was very functional. And to be fair, like it was early on, and you're working with factories that they're not the experts in this space, because when you're that small, it's difficult to get the expert to work with you. That's just how these things work. As volume goes up and you're able to give them more business, you get better factories and you get in with better developers. And that's just how the process works. So, I remember the first set of gear they brought me, it had like shoulder pads, like foam shoulder pads in the shoulders. And I'm like, what is happening here? Right. You just are like so confused as to why those would be in there, but they're trying things and they're working through processes. And this is, in those days, it was just Terry Baisley, who just retired recently. He was the vice president of the company, but he was flying over there. He was the designer. He was the developer, and he has no background in that as far as like real education. It's like he went to school to become a developer designer. So he's doing the best job he can. But man, it was rough. Like, it's fine. Did it slow me down? Did it make my results worse? No. But were there some funky designs and things you're like looking around going, man, we look out of place here? Yeah, there was that in the early days.
Did you have much input or say that they took to the designers, to Terry, to try to change things?
Early on, no,
Yeah.
Because I didn't really have a relationship with them yet. That deal was put together through Subway Honda. So I was just kind of an addition to that program. As the years went on and my relationship grew and the trust level and all those things came about, then yeah, of course, I was able to give input, and I think they trusted me more, and they knew that I was coming from the right place. Like, my heart was in this thing, and I just wanted to see the brand succeed versus just my own personal gain as like, oh, I just want a better product. Well, no, I'm also emotionally invested in this thing now. I've been a part of this company for a long time, and I want to see us progress together.
So over the years that Fly's been developing to what we have now, was it a gradual trajectory of improvement, or was there a point where Terry or Craig said, okay, we have to rethink everything. We have to change things to become an elite brand and make drastic changes aesthetically, quality wise, et cetera? Was there a definitive time?
I think the big turning point was when the company hired Jerry Lathrop. And Jerry was a protege of Troy Lee and lived in Southern California. He was a helmet painter by expertise, but he also had a lot of training in, graphic design and all these things too. So, to Craig's credit, at the time, he went out and poached who he felt like was the best new guy that could lead a brand forward, right? And he was young enough. He had the aspiration. He had the training. He had the knowledge of the motocross industry because he had worked at Troy Lee. So they went out and they just found the best guy they could and who they thought would be the right guy. And he's still there, right? That's been, I want to say that was like 2007. That could be wrong, but I think it was around that era. And now we're in 2022 and he's still there and he is our creative director. So to me, that was a turning point because now they had somebody that truly had the right background for this and could be forward thinking and get us, go chase down the right factories and really put this on the right path. Because before it was, as I mentioned, it was Terry, but he had different roles, but he was in charge of sales, period. End of story. He was in charge of sales. So to have your designer, your developer, and the person that's in charge of sales for the entire company of WPS like that, there's no way you're going to be doing all those things to the best of your ability because you're splitting time. So to me, that was really, if you went back and like, okay, where did this thing really start to ramp up? That was probably it.
Okay. Now, you kind of touched on it, but how did your relationship within working with the guys at Fly, WPS, how did that become eventually your career now? Was it just building the relationship with Terry and the guys or your development, or did they just see something special within you that they felt like you could handle it?
Yeah. So I was racing obviously for them. There were a couple of years in there where Subway Honda went a different direction with Answer and other things that were, not my control. I was just along for the ride. But I maintained relationships through those off years and just got really close with those guys in the team. And I was always one of their marquee guys. Of course they had Andrew Short and guys along the way, but I was a top, 15 450 guy that they had a lot of resources allocated towards. So that relationship flourished. And if you look over the course of, Fly Racing's history, they've always maintained those relationships, whether it's Andrew Short or Trey Kennard or now Weston Pike. Damon Bradshaw has been a part of the team for a very long time now. And that's not an accident, right? The riders they choose, and not only that, but how they treat athletes as well. I think there's a reason why people want to stick around and want to become a part of that fly racing family afterwards. And so when my racing started to wind down a little bit, it was actually probably 2 years before I stopped. I was probably 30, 31 at the time. Terry mentioned like, hey, you're not going to race forever, but we would like you to become, something with us. We don't know the right fit. We'll have to cross that bridge when we come to it, but just know that we'd like to keep you on in some capacity at Western Power Sports and Fly Racing when this comes to an end. And I think he was trying to be careful because no one wants to hear like, hey, we're watching your race and it looks like you're about done.
Sure.
And he wasn't coming across that way. I think he was just planting a seed of like, hey, when it's time, let's have a talk. So I just kind of filed it away in the back of my head, and I was nowhere near ready to race yet because I think that was 2010 and I was actually having a good season. But flash forward to 2012 and my mindset had completely flipped. I didn't want to be out there anymore. I just, I was honestly more scared of being injured than anything else. And I just felt like racing had kind of passed me by. I had lost the edge a little bit.
Yeah.
So I reapproached Terry about it. I'm like, hey, I know we had this conversation, but I think that time we spoke about is rapidly approaching. So that set off a ton of other conversation about, okay, where do we fit? Do you stay in Florida? And my initial thought was I was just going to be a Western Power Sports outside rep, which those are the guys, like if I'm out seeing dealers like I am last week and this week, those are the people that I would be with. And we have around 115 of those around the country that are just WPS reps. And that's not counting our B-Twin division. But that was the easy fit because I could stay in Florida. You can make your own schedule within reason, right? You have to really be disciplined with that, but you schedule with the dealers when you're going to visit and all those things, which would allow me some freedom to do the things that I wanted to do. I want to write for Racer X and get into the podcast game with Steve and all these things. So it was the ideal fit. And also another side of that is, that world is commission based, and the better job you do and the harder you hustle, obviously your income can go up. So for me, I looked at that like, man, this is everything that I could possibly want, because not only do I get to make my own schedule and do all the things that I mentioned, I can, really hustle and make a lot of money doing this. So it was just the right fit in so many ways. And in hindsight, I still wish some days that it worked out because I think I could have done a good job at it. But I also look back at the decision that they made to be like, no, this isn't the right path for you, and we're going to bring you inside, ended up being the right one. And just quickly, that summer, I knew I was stopping racing. So I had formal job interviews, came in, met with Terry, met with the regional manager who's still in place. I work with him every day now. His name's Jim Chester. Some of you will recognize that name. And in the end, they were just like, we just don't think this is going to work. And I was devastated. I was angry, not necessarily at them, but just at the situation. And, Terry called me right away. He's like, just be patient. I know you're upset, but there's a reason that we're saying no. It's not no to you. It's no to this position right now. And Florida was in a real state of flux. If you remember back in that time, we were coming out of the great financial crisis, and our industry was not in a good place at all. And I think they were worried that the position wouldn't work because the sales numbers weren't very good and I wouldn't make very much money and I would quit. And they didn't want it to end that early and then there'd be no opportunity past that.
Of course.
So it was great that they had that foresight and just like, hey, just be patient. We have a bigger, better plan for you. And I know I'm being very long-winded here, but I'm just trying to paint the picture of how this was all playing out. So fast forward, 6 weeks, maybe 2 months, And I'm still kind of like, what am I going to do here, man? I don't have a job. Racing is done for me. I didn't finish college. I went for 2 years, but I didn't finish. So I don't have a formal education to present to anybody. And lo and behold, Terry calls me, and I'll never forget this call. I was driving. It's the off season. It was like September of 2012. And I'm driving to a Starbucks. It was like in the afternoon. And I was doing some off season training, but it was like kind of my downtime. And he calls me. It's like, hey, what are you doing? I'm like, honestly, nothing. I'm driving to Starbucks at 3:00 on a Tuesday. And he's like, well, I think I have an opportunity. I think I have the answer to what we've been looking for. I'm like, all right, that's a good way to start a call. And he explained to me that he was going to be transitioning to managing and being, directly responsible for our fledgling V Twin division, which is now it's massive. It's called Hard Drive. And he needed to put all of his time and effort into that. But in the past, he had been the one traveling to see all of the international distribution that we have around the country, because our business model, we have a different distribution model in each country, especially more back then we did, even than we do now. So he would have to go visit them. He would have to present the line to them. He would have to manage their sales alongside them and forecast with them and all those things. But he couldn't do that anymore. He was spread way too thin, and probably had been for a very long time. And he said, he was laying out this job opportunity and all these things. And I was like, man, this sounds too good to be true. I'm not qualified for this, but I'm willing to learn. I'll do whatever it takes. And he's like, well, the last thing of this that I have to mention is this is a Boise position. Like, yes, you're going to travel a ton. You're going to be in, all over the world at all times, like I've been for the last 20 years. But your home base has to be in Boise, because you need to be working with the design team and working with all the infrastructure and the accounting teams and all these things on those accounts. And I was like, oh man, like I took a deep breath, because I didn't honestly know if that was a deal breaker for me or not, because I'd never considered it. So, I said, Terry, this is an amazing opportunity. Number one, I appreciate it more than I could ever tell you, but I need 24 hours to decide if I'm moving my entire life to Idaho or not. I don't know the answer to that. Maybe I shouldn't even question it and just say yes right now, but I need some time to think, because this is coming out of left field. So he, of course, being Terry, we have such a great relationship. He's like, yeah, no problem. Just call me, this week even is fine. But we need to kind of move on this. So we need to do something relatively quickly. So I called my mom, and my dad was there, and they're talking about it, and they're like, I mean, you have to do this. Like, you have to. Like, if you turn this down, what is your alternative? Like, how this could be a lifelong opportunity for you. I'm like, okay. So then I call like people I trust, Steve Mathis, people in the industry, and they're all like, dude, you should have said yes on the spot. Like, what are you even considering? So I'm like, yeah, I'm clearly the idiot here that, I have to do all the moving and accept the job and everything. But If everybody is like, you have to do this, then I do. So I called him back in under an hour and said, I don't know what you're going to pay me. I don't know when I can be there yet. Like, it'll be soon, but do not offer this job to anybody else. Like, I'm going to take it. I will be there, and let's just start moving forward towards it. So, that's been 10 years and a month since I moved to Boise. So sorry, it's so long-winded.
No, it's great. It's great information. And that shows, hell, I've recently had that fear of taking a job opportunity. It's not easy, right? I mean, to just change everything, and move. Thankfully I didn't have to move, but I totally understand where your doubts came from, because that's a big change. It's scary.
It is. And for me, like, I didn't have a job, right?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't have any source of income moving forward, because racing had been for 15 or 16 years. So when I started really thinking about it, like, even if I hate Boise, even if I don't like, I need to go do this, like, out of necessity. I need to take this. Forget about how excited I am about the opportunity. I need this. I mean, obviously the job, I've been there 10 years. I love it. If anybody that knows me knows how passionate I am about, Western power sports and fly racing. And honestly, I'm pretty close to as passionate about Boise. I really love living there. And, I got very lucky with that, because if Terry had told me, like, hey, you have to move to I don't know, I don't want to pick on anywhere in particular, somewhere I didn't really care for in the country, I would have ended up going anyway. And that it happened to be Boise, and Boise happens to be so amazing is so perfect. Like it's very, very fortunate. Is the best way to put it, because it could have been anywhere and I still would have done it. It just happened to be in a place that I truly enjoy living.
Oh, good for you, man. It's awesome that it worked out. Fly racing has kind of always been, or at least for as long as I've known about it, been very privateer driven. Was that a conscious effort?
It was. And I think in the early days it was necessity based and also a plan, if that makes sense. I think they looked at the landscape and said, okay, is the brand in a place, and is Western Power Sports in a place where we can go out and hire Chad Reed, Ricky Carmichael, Travis Pastrana, take your pick? And they're like, no, we don't have the resources. We can't support them effectively because we don't have the product in a good enough place yet. And they're just too expensive. Like they cost more than we can justify for how much fly racing does in business. So they said, what we can do is we can help all these guys that don't get any help and they don't get free gear, and we can really paint the field with riders. And we can do that because we can handle the cost of the materials, and we see a need for a lot of these riders. That the genius side of it was not only, if you go to a Supercross, do you see tons of them out there wearing fly racing, but when they go home and they're racing local races all summer and they're going to their local practice track, they're the fastest guy there, and I think that's a very understated part of this sport. Is you go to a Supercross and you watch these guys race, and the guys that don't make the main, you're like, man, he's not very good. Or go a step further, and the guys that don't make the night show, and you're like, man, these guys suck. I hear it all the time. Sure. I hear it from fans all the time. Yep. And I'm like, you have no idea how good that guy is. If he was at your local track, he would smoke everybody there and make them look silly. What you're looking at is the very best in the world and comparing them against that, and it's just like any other sport, right? Like Chris Betts, right? Like amazing baseball player, drafted out of high school, straight into, minor league baseball, crazy good. You watch him in home runs and all these things. And I love that he's a part of our sport now. And he doesn't work in it, but we've adopted him.
Yes.
He never got to make it to the majors, right? But he's an amazing, amazing baseball player. That's, to me, this kind of the same thing as like, yeah, if you want to compare some privateer to Eli Tomac, okay, I understand. But to think that they're not amazing, and to think that every little kid that watches them midweek or on an off weekend race somewhere and they want to be that guy, that's the value in it. And I was that child. I watched all the local pros that never really made it, air quotes around made it. But I wanted to be who they were. I wanted to win the A class at the local races. And I never imagined that I would even get that far, let alone, live in Supercross for that long. So that was kind of to me, the genius behind it that I didn't ever realize is like, you can, for a very low cost, have all these privateers and really just blanket the country with the fastest local racers in the country for like I said, you're not spending, like $1 million on one rider.
Yeah.
Like, what the peak guys get. So
all your eggs in one basket, basically.
Yeah. And I give credit to other brands too, because they've followed that model. I don't need to name them, but you can look out across the landscape and see who's doing it. A lot of brands are helping tons and tons of privateers, which is great. But I also think that they followed the model that fly racing laid out, 15 years ago as well.
Yeah. And I'm sure you guys have done the research and to figure this out, but if you were to go get a major rider, I mean, there's rumors that one of those major riders may fall into fly racing this year if things go a certain way. But what is the return on investment on a guy like Eli Tomac? Does Alpine Stars really sell that much more gear because Eli's in it? I mean, have you guys done that research to see what the numbers actually look like?
Sure. And we distribute Alpine Stars gear. So we have a really easy way to monitor that. To me, it's always challenging to say this spend equals these dollars. In our industry, it's really, really difficult. I think over time, if you're trying to create and grow a brand, you can get a much more accurate picture of like, hey, these were the steps we took over a decade. These are where our sales were. These are what our sales are now. Did that spend make sense to get us to where we are? because it's a delayed response many times. It takes a long time for the customer to realize an athlete's in the product, have their, kind of win over their minds and hearts. And then that influences in the end their buying decision for years to come. And that doesn't happen overnight. And if you think it's going to happen overnight, then you're probably in for a big disappointment. And specifically to the Alpinestars point, I don't always think that, actually, I'm very confident that, Mr. Mazzarola, Gabriele Mazzarola is the owner and he's in charge of Alpinestars, and in the end, he makes the decision. Yes, he has a board. Yes, they have a lot of smart people influencing his decisions, but he makes the decision. I don't think I know he's not always looking at it going, you know what, if we hire this guy, I'm going to sell more. I would challenge that. He's one of the most passionate people in the sport about racing and winning. And I think he truly just wants to have the best athletes and he wants to win. Does it make financial sense all the time? Probably not. I can't imagine that he can just go, yep, this spend equaled those dollars. And that was a brilliant move, because you look at, they have everyone, not only in Moto, but in MXGP and in MotoGP, and it's everywhere. Right. And I think that's much, much more passion based than it is dollars and cents based.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, if you have the money, I guess just go ahead.
Yep. Yeah. Right. You have to always be balancing smart business decisions. But I think my personal decision, or my personal opinion, they could roll back a bunch of spending and still sell as much. They just wouldn't be winning everything. And I really think that's what it comes down to, is they want to win. They want their guys, the best guys in their product. And it's commendable. I don't know if it's always the most efficient plan. That's not for me to decide. But it's commendable.
All right. A few more things with you. With growth comes like new marketing avenues. You mentioned, obviously you've always done magazines, and there's the podcast like Steve Mathis, PulpMX. And in 2018, WPS was partnered with Feld and Monster Energy Supercross. That was a big, big deal. What are the pros and cons of those types of advertisement? I have to assume to work with Monster Energy, Feld Entertainment, it's very expensive. So what are the pros and cons? Is, again, just like what we just talked about, getting the eyes on the label, the WPS logo?
Yeah, there's a lot to it. The WPS side is absolutely about dealer business. For the average consumer, it's irrelevant. They don't even need to know who WPS is. But when you have, 10,000 or more active WPS dealers around the country, probably a much higher number than that. Some of these dealers are smaller, but there's a ton of these, tens of thousands of WPS dealers across the country. Well, they have a decision to make on a lot of products, because we offer a lot of the same products that our competitors do. Well, that dealer and that, whoever's behind the counter that's going to order parts for his customer, he has to decide who he's buying those from. Is he going to buy them from us, or is he going to buy from one of our other competitors? So we're trying to win over that business. We're trying to make him as familiar and as comfortable with fly racing as humanly possible. So that's where you see not only us, but Parts Unlimited before us really push that side, is because we want those dealers to know as much as possible about us. And we also want them to see us supporting this sport and hopefully driving customers into their door, and creating door swings for them. So that's really the distribution side. The fly racing side, obviously we're trying to sell products to dealers and end consumers hand in hand. So there's really, it's the same company. Yes. Are all the same marketing materials coming out of the same building? Yes. But the ideas and the reasonings behind them are completely different. Frankly, if a person walking around, mini Olympics this week doesn't even know what WPS is, kind of doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. But if all the dealers around the country do, that does matter. That's where huge business lies, in the margins of them knowing and choosing us and not.
Okay. Back to fly racing specifically, every year or two, you guys try to evolve a line or a particular product. In the last couple of years, obviously the BOA system came out, the revolutionary Formula helmet came out. And it's kind of talk about the development of making changes on products, upgrading, just how long it takes. I like a consumer might say, why doesn't Fly Racing make X? And it's not as easy as, okay, we'll make that. Kind of just discuss what you got, how many years out you are in development, and deciding what products work and what don't work for the brand.
Yeah. So, thankfully we have probably the widest line in the sport. And I say that pretty confidently. Sometimes it's to the, trying to think of the right
detriment.
word. I think our CFO and our CEO probably look at us and shake their head because our SKU count is so high at times. But we truly want to do the best job we can to service dealers and consumers. And we're constantly looking at the line and saying, what are we missing? Like, where in this line can we be better? And what are we not offering? And you try to, constantly improve those things and then add products. So we've been doing that. We see a huge opportunity for us to improve in the protection game. So that's where a ton of our focus has been. We're really pushing hard to get products to market, and it's really, really difficult right now. We just are launching this Revel Light chest protector, which is, for most people, it's going to be an under protector. So think very minimalist, form-fitting, but also CE Stone Shield protected. So you get that hard shell, but it's built to be under jersey and for no one to know you have it on. That's really the goal of this thing. And if you see the Supercross guys out there now, they're all wearing something like this. For years it was the Alpinestars A1, which is really kind of our inspiration for it, being as transparent as possible. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to get products, but it is so difficult from all the problems that started from COVID that are still lingering. I'll give you an example, like CE testing, right? If you want to bring protection to market, it's anything in Europe, it has to be CE, and America is moving more and more towards CE. The backlog to get something CE approved is about a year, something like that. And that's because nothing got done during COVID. Like, the doors were closed, no one could travel. So all these things just piled up. Like, people were still working on things and getting them in the queue, but nothing was getting done. So now, we've just been working through, and but they're getting just more and more stacked on top of it because everyone else is still building products and still trying to get them to market. So that's been really, really tough. That Revel Light chest protector was in the catalog a year ago. So think about that, right? We were supposed to launch that thing August of 2021, and we're just now bringing it to market like this week. So that's the kind of challenges we're dealing with. But to answer your question, like the things we're kind of working on, we always look at, kind of a cross section of demand and what do we feel like we're missing? Like, what are we being asked for? We always are examining the competition. What are they doing well? Where are there holes in the market? And right now we really feel like protection is something that we could do a much better job, and we're kind of where our focus is on.
Okay. Two more questions. The VIP program that you ran at Supercross, that was your baby, your idea, if I'm not mistaken. Just how did
Yes and no. It was actually more of like the Butler Brothers MX team years ago. Mm-hmm. It was their idea. And then I just kind of took it and ran with it. So
okay.
I need to give them credit on the conceptual part. I just took it and tried to make it into something really, really big.
Well, it seems like fans really enjoyed that, and then they get a little insight to the teams. I just wanted to talk about the program and whether it will be back in 23. I think it is.
Yes. So I've had to make all kinds of adjustments and things to it because COVID and, the Butler Brothers MX team, which is, was Rocky Mountain KTM, and I don't even know what's going on with it now. But obviously there have been a ton of challenges with that team, and, Fly Racing is no longer affiliated. Western Power and Sports is no longer affiliated. So that got really messy, and I just couldn't continue on there doing that anymore. But yeah, I've been moving forward with it as much as I can. And for me, it's just trying to offer people a better experience on race day, right? Show them things they normally wouldn't get to see. I'm basically a sponge all day for them to bounce questions off of, get insight. We have a track walk opportunity. And a lot of these guys, like, instead of being on the other side of the fence of all these things, like, let's get a little bit more insight. Let's ask all the questions you never got to ask before. Let's get you as much behind the scenes access. And thankfully, the riders have all been super gracious. I'll introduce them to riders and all that stuff. So it's gotten a little bit murky. Like I would like for it to be much more clean and clear and everything. But yeah, COVID and team issues and everything else made it tough. But yeah, it is still going, and it's something that I'm still very, very passionate about.
Great. I love to hear it's coming back. Last question. Recently, the Arrowhead Engineered Products Group, I guess, bought out Western Power Sports. With change comes good things, probably some bad things, but what do you see the future as for WPS and Fly?
Well, I think we're still going down the same path, right? A lot of the same people are there. We all have the same goals, but yeah, anytime there's an acquisition like that, you go through a transition phase, which we're still working through. As how do they want things done? Because it's their company now. Of course, we still want to improve brands, sell more products, serve customers, serve dealers. Like none of that changes, but it's more of like the day-to-day stuff of like policy change, and we have more meetings now, which is good. We have more communication, but there's structurally things are different. And a lot of that stuff that it doesn't matter at the end of the day, as far as business goes, it's just kind of annoying at the time because there's a lot of uncertainty of like, so who do I talk to at HR now? And what our insurance is changing, stuff like that. Like, does it matter for anyone else? No. But for us, it's a lot of change, and we're kind of like every day is a new dynamic. But we've kind of worked through all that. The biggest thing is we have a company that is very invested in us continuing to grow. We've had really, really positive conversations about how we can take things to the next level, and not only kind of continue the growth path, but like, let's grab a gear. Like, let's be better than we were before, because the company that bought us is really well capitalized. So that gives us opportunity, right? We can go after riders that maybe we weren't able to before, or we can invest in new categories that maybe we weren't able to before. So you have to look at every part of the equation. Now, is it tough at times when you have change internally? Sure it is. Like Max Steffens just left, who's one of my best friends and has worked there since before I was there. Terry Baisley retired. Craig Shoemaker was our former owner. Obviously, he's no longer there with his company was bought from him. So those things are a bummer. Yes, no question about it. But you have to look at what are the silver linings? Like, what are these opportunities going to allow us to do that we couldn't do before, and make the most of it? Because, it wasn't a negative dynamic. Like when Terry left, we had the best send-off party, and he was there for 25 years. He did everything that he could have ever set out to accomplish. So you can't be sad. You just have to understand that this is the natural progression of things. And this change was what was necessary to kind of take us and Fly Racing to the next level and allow us to realize what our true potential could be.
Well, I can't wait to see what the future is. I always look forward to seeing what the gear's going to look like for the next group, the next batch. And I'm looking forward to the future and seeing what you guys have coming up.
Me too, man. It's an exciting time. It's like a weird time for me because it's really busy with work. Like we're in holiday sales and business is kind of booming right now, and we're rock and rolling because everybody's in this push to Christmas right now. But for me personally, it's like my slowest time of the year because I'm not going to Supercross races every weekend. I actually get to spend, as I'm not in the office right now, I say I get to spend more time in the office and I'm in Florida, but things like my world slows down a little bit. I don't have as many things I have to write about. There's lots of downtime for we have our Pulp MX Fantasy. I don't have to do that podcast every week, and Fly Moto 60 show I don't have to do every week. And I sometimes wonder man, what am I gonna do with all this extra free time? But I also have to remember how exhausted I am most of the time during the season. So exactly. It's a little bit of give and take there. And I think I just try to focus all that energy onto Fly Racing now that I can be a little bit more singularly focused until January rolls around.
I dig it, man. Jason, thanks for some time. I know it's Thanksgiving week. Probably got a lot of stuff going on. You said you're heading to Minio, so enjoy the rest of your week, and I appreciate you.
No worries, man. And congratulations, Jamie. I know you've been working towards, these things that you're getting to do now for a very long time. And I've been happy to be a small, part of that and get to watch you grow into this position and get to do this full time. So on a personal level, I'm very happy for you, and I just want to say congratulations.
Well, that means a lot, and I have to thank you because you helped me before. I think you helped me before I even was involved with the podcast. You were helping me with stuff. So, you were very supportive of me, and I'll always be very thankful to you and WPS and Fly Racing for giving me, discounts and everything you did when I felt like I was just nobody, really. Why would you even bother helping me? But you did, so it means a lot.
All good, man. All good. I'm happy to help. And so we'll see you. January and Anaheim are going to be here before we know it.
Yeah.
It's pretty unbelievable.
I'll be at a lot more races this year, so I'm sure you'll be seeing me a bunch, and we'll be talking smack on some fantasy.
Looking forward to it, man.
All right. See you soon.
All right.
Bye.